understand, like, can I keep this up? Right? Can I continue to play at this level? So first game comes, play great. Second game comes. And the games, what was interesting about being moved from tight end to fullback is the games were actually a relief. Games were easier than practice because at fullback, the biggest difference for me going from tight end to fullback was the level of collision was that much greater. At tight end, half the time you're going out catching passes. The other half of the time, you're kind of on the edge and blocking guys that are 1 to 2 yards away from you. But when you're playing fullback, you're lined up further back in the backfield and you're running full dead on speed against another person who's 10 yards away from you. And if you could imagine, visualize in your mind, like two bulls lined up 10 yards away from each other and then dead on sprinting, trying to kill each other. That's what it was every single play. So this wasn't like a take a play off type of position. It was every time you're in, you're trying to kill the other person. And it's the biggest collision every single time, like a car crash. So now the thing was, I was good at it. I was good doing that, but your body can only take that so long. And for me, the first thing to go in terms of, all the alarms going off was my head. At that position, you're running through the big, giant, massive guards and tackles, and the gap is literally maybe as wide as your shoulders. So you're not fitting up on the guy and hitting him with your shoulders the way you're supposed to. You're running straight through him with your head. And if you're doing that against the biggest, strongest, fastest guys in the world, pretty much, your head can only take a beating so much. So my neck down, from the neck down, my body felt like indestructible. I never felt better in my life. The level of treatment, nutrition, everything that we had at the pro level was second to none. But my head was kind of like an egg. Once you crack an egg, it doesn't get better, right? It just continues to crack worse and worse. So that's kind of where the bottle had started to crack itself. And although I was playing great, it just the effects of hitting my head in over and over and over again became so overwhelming to where now I had this, like, I had to start adjusting the way I was playing, and started to make decisions like, do I want to go full speed on this one, or do I need to try to kind of let up a little bit? And the moment that started to happen, I knew, all right, something's got to give. And then I actually had to start icing my head after practice. That was the ultimate moment of like, all right, if I'm having to ice my head, something's wrong here, right? And ESPN was talking about concussions for the first time. Never heard them talk about it on ESPN before. They're talking about it. You see the old vets walking around, they're all banged up and, their eyes are all looking glossy. And I just knew if I kept doing this, I might have an awesome career. Because here's what the icing on the cake was for me. Probably one of the most fulfilling moments throughout that whole journey was Norv Turner, seeing lots of athletes, having coached many different teams. He kept pulling me aside, telling me, dude, keep doing what you're doing. You're going to have a long career. And to me, I was just like overwhelmed with the fact that he was seeing that in me. And my play was backing that up. But the more I kept playing, the more I kept feeling it in my head. And so I just knew I got in one hand the dream, and who knows how long that dream is going to last, especially at fullback. It might be 5 years, it might be 6 years, whatever it is, and make a lot of money. Or I could live a longer life and have to start all over. And just that moment of making that decision was such a heavy weight, but I knew I couldn't spend a lot of time thinking about it. Otherwise, I would just kind of stay where I was. Because who in their right mind would want to walk away from being in the NFL? Something that's so hard to get to. And think about all the fame you have, all the notoriety. I mean, the first day that I showed up, I turned my phone off just so I could be focused and stay in the moment. As soon as I turned my phone on, it literally did not stop ringing and vibrating for like an hour plus. with all the notifications, all the, oh, congratulations. Oh, can't wait to come see you play. Oh, this, that, and the other. And that's what it is. Like, you're thrust into that whole spotlight, that fame. And, who doesn't want that to some level, to some degree? And so, yeah, I had to make that decision, like life or fame and money. And I chose to walk away, man. Chose to walk away and didn't look back.
What did the coach say?
It was just that conversation. I mean, you're just a number, right? That's part of the thing that was also pretty crazy if you've ever seen Hard Knocks on HBO, you can see how much of a business it is, right? And even the best of the best Hall of Famers, they're not untouchable either. Like they have a runway to their journey too. And so it just became that conversation. I'm sitting in the room with Norv Turner and the GM, and it's just like, hey, I can't continue to play at the same level that I am, with what you see in me, because just the head-on collisions, just the constant beating of the head. And, it's not like I had the opportunity to switch back to tight end. We had Antonio Gates, an absolute legend in the game. So for me, it just became that decision. Well, do I try to go to other teams? Do I, try to figure it out if I can still play tight end? And it just wasn't, to me, an option, because I'd already done enough damage, in just that short period of time. And so I had to move on.
Wow, that is insane. So any of you listening to that, I mean, the way he described that, it just brings you into it. I mean, you can almost just feel like every play just running your head into a brick wall and then like icing your head. I mean, the helmets, the pads, and all that stuff. I mean, watching the game, thinking, this equipment's so high tech, like there's no way that, you feel anything, but clearly you do. We just don't, the audience doesn't see that. And, I guess you made this decision. So after that, like, did you have a plan B? Did you have like an idea? Oh, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. Like where did you transition from that? I mean, you just left the NFL, which I would assume by leaving, you left your contract too.
Yeah. Left the contract.
So income goes to zero.
Income to zero. And one of the things I like to remind people, because everyone, when you give them the highlight reel of, oh, I played in the NFL and, oh, I've done these many deals. They're like, well, yeah, because you started with so much money. The reality is I walked away from the money. I didn't walk away with the money. You know what I mean? So for me, starting from ground zero was a real dose of reality for me. That was not something I was prepared for, but it was also something I just knew I had to do. And there was no other choice. There was no other plan B. I mean, my whole life had been around sports. There wasn't some other like backup plan or family business to walk into. It was just, all right, I got to go figure life out now. And there was a part of me that had some little thing in my head, like maybe I will go to another team. Like I still kind of had those lingering feelings, and other teams were actually calling me, but I just knew, it's not the right time. We'll stay in touch, type of thing. So, I was fortunate enough to have one of my college teammates who was working for a tech company out of the Bay Area in San Francisco. And he's like, hey, Dean, I know you're done playing. I'm working for this great company. They're about to go public. I think it'd be a great fit for you. So he basically walked me past all the red tape, walked me right in the door. And this is literally just months after. And I said, all right, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to look forward and take my next step. So I start that job in the Bay Area. And what was funny is, as I'm filling out the paperwork, like your experience, I write NFL, right? They're like, well, what was your salary? I said, $1.2 million, like the job was offering $65,000. That was the salary. And I was like, well, can I negotiate? They're like, no, this is an entry-level position and you have no experience to offer really. So So I now am at a $65,000 salary, basically a negative income when you're living in somewhere like San Francisco. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take the opportunity. So I started, and dude, I was trained for war. I was a modern day gladiator, trained for war, prepared mentally, prepared physically. And now I'm working at a desk job, slapping a keyboard around. It was almost a joke. I remember just like spinning in my chair, typing on the keyboard. I'm like, this is it. Like, people get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for this. This is like the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. And so I bust my butt, and I know what position I'm in, but I'm like, dude, I'm going to bust my butt. They're going to see how much effort I'm willing to put in, because that's what's always gotten me ahead, is the level of effort I was willing to put in consistently. And I just remember, like, that first year had passed, 12 months, and I'm looking around like, well, aren't I supposed to get tapped on the shoulder about a pay raise? Do I need to initiate this? How does this work? I don't know how this thing works. And the next month goes by, and I'm like, okay, something's got to give. So I nudge my manager. I'm like, hey, how does this whole like pay raise thing work? He's like, well, let me schedule a meeting with you. So we schedule a meeting. We sit down. I'm nervous and excited at the same time. I'm like, okay, they're gonna bump me up to six figures now. Like, six figures. I know people coming out of college that are getting six figures at these big tech companies. So I'm ready for my pay to go up to six figures. He's like, hey, Dean, we were able to get you an increase on your salary by 2%. And you're now at $67,000. And I just remember feeling so sick to my stomach that they increased my pay by $2,000. And I now had to live with that for another year. This isn't one of those things where, like, you go work on a big deal and you get this big pay raise or this big bonus. I wasn't in that type of role. They increased my pay by $2,000. And I just remember feeling so sick and so broke that I had to do something different. And so I remember going back to my 424 square foot apartment in San Francisco, and just thinking to myself, what else do I even like? I mean, I got to do something here. And so I just remember thinking about, like, well, I like real estate. I remember watching HGTV shows with my parents and stuff like that. So I like real estate. Maybe I'll be a real estate agent or something. So I type into Google how to get started in real estate. And what popped up was a podcast, the Flip to Freedom podcast from Sean Terry. And it was talking about how to get started in real estate investing with little to no money. And that just like spoke to my heart. I'm like, dude, I got little to no money. So maybe this is what I need to do. So I just remember turning on the podcast and just his level of passion, conviction, what he was talking about, the type of money he was making. I was like, dude, this is it. This is what I need to do. I don't need to look any further. So I just remember becoming obsessed with everything this man was saying in his podcast. I mean, there was no video, there was no program. It was just the podcast, him explaining how he was finding opportunities, how he was communicating with the potential sellers of these houses, and how he was putting the deal together with the contracts. And just by listening and taking massive action, I did my first deal within 3 months.